When it comes to life imitating art, there are two theories that prevail. One is that as we watch things that are violent, we tend to release our frustrations and aggressions. This is called cathartic theory or catharsis. The other theory is called social learning theory, and this is the opposite, which says as we watch things that are aggressive or violent, we actually are more likely to become that way ourselves. And this is really what our study is about. Not so much about watching films as it is about watching people in real life. All right, so before we get to social learning theory, a little bit of background for the Bandura slash Bobo doll experiment. What you might want to know is that the prevailing thought about learning was that we learn through what's called classical conditioning or operant conditioning. Classical conditioning is the foundation of behaviorism. All right, next year in A level, you might get more of this. But just to keep it short, if you ring a bell every time you bring a dog food, those two things will become associated with each other. The natural or unconditioned stimulus is the food, and the new stimulus or the conditioned stimulus is the bell. And this has been extended to human beings as well, most famously with the Little Albert experiment in 1920 with a boy who was conditioned to fear furry white things, including rats and Santa Claus. Moving on to operant conditioning, this was the bread and butter of a man named B.F. Skinner, who created what's called Skinner boxes to demonstrate how positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, and even punishment are strong motivators for people to learn. Okay, so rewards and punishment are the basis of people learning new behaviors. Okay, so for example, if I were to blast a car horn and hope that you change your behavior, you're trying to get the horn to stop, and that would be an example of negative reinforcement, removing something undesirable. Okay, so reinforcement's always good, and punishment is always bad. All right, let's actually get to the study itself. That's enough background. We could look at Bandura's life, but the most important thing about him for now is that he formulated social learning theory. What is social learning theory? Social learning theory is essentially the idea that a person learns through observation. That's the main idea. It could also state that learning can be internal, not always just demonstrated. So just because you learn something doesn't mean you're going to demonstrate that behavior. Social learning theory depends on paying attention to a model, remembering what that person did or retention, reproducing that action, and being encouraged to do it again. So the name of the study is The Transmission of Aggression Through Imitation of Aggression Models. That just rolls off the tongue, so I just like to call it the Bobo doll experiment. Much easier to remember this. But it is about imitative aggression. The main apparatus for this study is a Bobo doll. There are two Bobo dolls. There's one that's 5 feet tall and one that's 3 feet tall. The taller one will be used by the aggressive model, and the smaller one will perhaps be used by the child depending on his own motivations for being aggressive. All right. Many students get the procedure kind of confused because there are 3 rooms, and this can be kind of confusing. Room number 1 is where the children settle in. There's a few toys there, and in 1/3 of the cases, there is a model there doing something aggressive with the Bobo doll, throwing it, kicking it, calling it names, hitting it with a mallet. Room number 2 is filled with attractive toys, things like a fire engine or a spinning top. And the children are told, you cannot play with these are for other children. The purpose of room number 2 is to increase their frustration or to arouse their frustration. Room number 3 is the most important room. It is the experimental room. This is where the DV is actually measured. And so the toys in here are both aggressive and non-aggressive, and we're going to see which one of those toys the children gravitate towards and if they copy the behavior of the model. This study is actually very well balanced. There is one group that is aggressive, or at least in an aggressive model condition, and the other 2 are for comparisons. So we have 24, 24, 24. That makes 72 children, both boys and girls, evenly divided, 36 boys, 36 girls. This is a very symmetrical or very mathematically even study. Remember that the children were pre-rated for aggression, so in each group there are an equal number of aggressive and non-aggressive children as well, so it's very well balanced. They tried their best to make this a very well-controlled study, and this is called a matched pairs design. So these kids were pre-rated for aggression on a scale of 0 to 5 by their school teacher and somebody else. And so if there were 4 aggressive children in group 1, there should be 4 aggressive children in group 2 and group 3. Okay. So again, the non-aggressive condition and the control group are there for comparisons for the aggressive condition. If you want to get into the more detail about it, this is even more numbers I could throw at you. In each condition, they could be subdivided by 6, 6, 6, 6. Boys with a man, boys with a woman, girls with a man, girls with a woman. So in other words, opposite gender, same gender. Okay, here's a look at the primary source. The primary source does tell us in some detail what the toys were in the room. Better than reading this, let's look at some pictures. Here are some of the main toys that are cited in the study. Now, not all of these toys are available in all rooms. In room number 1, this is where the person is either, the model is either showing aggression or not showing aggression or not there. So that's why we need the 5-foot Bobo doll. Even if the model is not there, we're still keeping that Bobo doll in the room. Room number 2 are those shiny, beautiful toys, especially for 1960, 1961. Back then there was no like Nintendo Switch. A locomotive, a shiny locomotive would be super exciting. A dollhouse set would be super exciting. These are beautiful, relatively expensive toys. And then in room number 3, the most important room of the study, we're in here for 20 minutes. Every 5 seconds, the observers are looking for either imitative or semi-imitative behaviors. Are they doing what the model did, or are they doing something new and original? So for example, if you look at these pictures here, what the children are doing is kind of imitative of what the model had done. However, there were some kids who got quite creative. So for example, one kid would shoot the Bobo doll with a gun, or hit the Bobo doll with a gun. That was not shown by the model, so therefore we would call this a non-imitative aggression or a creative aggression. All right, lots of data. I think if you're one of those people who like to memorize things, then go for it. But for me personally, I just like to know who's the highest, who's the lowest, what are the differences. So for example, we could see that males are much more likely to copy aggressive behavior if it's physical and if it's from other men. So boys copy men. This is true with women, except not with physical, but with verbal. So girls copy women, especially when it's verbal. So one more time, males physical, females verbal. Calling Bobo names, calling Bobo, whatever, stupid, jerk face, whatever. All right, you could pause this in your own time, take a look, draw some conclusions about it if you'd like. One conclusion might be that men are more influenced, or boys are more influenced by physical behavior than females, or something like this. What are the applications of this study? I think this study has good application. There's always an argument on the news about whether children should be playing violent video games, if kids could see movies that are PG-13 if they're not 13, things like this. So children who saw the aggressive model are more likely to aggressive behavior. This probably means you shouldn't buy your 8-year-old son Grand Theft Auto, but I've seen this happen all the time in GameStop. I watched a boy who was about 8 begging his grandfather to buy GTA 5. And he relented. Now, does that mean the boy's going to go out and sell drugs and kill people? Not necessarily, but I can imagine that it won't have some influence on that boy's development. So this study is evidence or support for those people who feel that media is too influential on young people in a bad way. Another thing you could say is that parents need to be careful about what they say or do around their children. If you don't want your kids to use the F word, then you probably shouldn't be using the F word yourself. All right, just to sum up, we started off by talking about the difference between catharsis and social learning theory. Catharsis was an idea of the ancient Greeks, namely Aristotle. Bandura would say, hey, we don't get a release, we actually get encouragement from watching people who are violent. So these are two ideas that are very 180 degrees out of phase with each other. All right. So I don't want to go through all of these, but I can go through some of them. Generalizability, 72 children is pretty high. Both genders evenly split. Reliability, there is control. Application we talked about. Validity, kids are often subjected to toys in strange, novel situations, for example, like a waiting room or something like that. So, even though it's a controlled environment, not the kid probably has no idea what he's even doing there, so he's not too suspicious, I would imagine, of what's happening. And ethics, I think the ethics are okay. Some people say, oh, well, they were subjected to violent imagery. That's wrong. There's no protection from psychological harm here. But I would argue that, wait, it's 1961. These kids can go home and watch Bonanza, watch cowboys and Indians shoot each other, or watch cops and robbers shoot each other. So it's a very different time. Actually, not terribly different in terms of, I mean, violence is much worse today on TV, but you would see much worse behavior in your daily media viewing. All right. So that's I think a 10-minute version of the study. I just wanted to get it out real quick and pause it where you feel like you need the most help. All right, guys, good luck tomorrow. Bye-bye.